Hi BookTube, it's Missy, and today I'm going to be doing my weekly wrap-up number 26, aka my read-a-thon wrap-up. I did pretty well. I did 5 books this week. Super excited. So let's get started with the books that I read. The first book I read was Red Spikes by Margot Lanigan. Now this is a collection of 10 short stories. I gave this a 3-star and I only liked 3 of the 10. The other ones were okay. They were, like I said, they're short stories, so either they didn't have enough information in it or they were kind of gruesome, which I didn't like. For example, the worst one of the collection is, well, second to worst. There was another worst one called Monkey's Paternoster, and that one was about monkeys mating and being raped by other juvenile male monkeys wanting to take over the hierarchy of the monkey world. Gross! All the girls, monkeys were, you know, complaining and bleeding, and it's just like, yuck. Absolute yuck. I know it's something that happens in animal societies. You know, there's no, hi, can I get to know you first? It's all wham bam, thank you ma'am, but not something I actually wanted to read. Okay, so for the 3 stories that I actually liked, the first one is called Baby Jane. This one was really good. It's about a little boy, I think he's 10, and his mom is a midwife. So he's been brought up knowing the things that happen when babies are born and kind of understands what his mom does in order to help get the baby going along. So one day he's in the woods and he sees 3 figurines, like little tiny toys. He likes them. He thinks they're fascinating. They're very intricate, deeply detailed. There is a warrior looking one with lots of armor on it, and she's got a swollen belly, so he's thinking that she's pregnant. And then there is a man. He doesn't find out till later who the man is, and then there is a bear. Then that night, he puts these figurines underneath his pillow and wakes up to a giant bear in his face. So the figurines come to life. The guy ends up being the woman's like right-hand man, not husband, but like a lady in waiting, but a man servant or something. And he tells the entire family of the house to leave. So the woman who's pregnant is actually a queen, a warrior queen, and she's trying to give birth to her baby. The boy can't sleep, and the manservant comes down and says, I need you to help my queen with the baby. Do you know who could help her? And he's like, well, my mom's a midwife. And he's like, great, wake her up. But the entire family is under some kind of magical sleeping spell, and so he can't, and he ends up having to deliver the baby himself. Once the baby is born, the queen gives the princess over to the boy and says, please watch over my princess. I will be back to get her in years' time after I have conquered the enemy and brought our kingdom back to justice, or whatever it is that she was doing. I thought this story was absolutely fascinating. I would have loved to continue reading on, but obviously it stopped because it's a short story. And so you just see them going off, turning back into figurines, and the boy's stuck with the baby. The next story that I really liked was called Under Hell, Over Heaven. And that one is about a group of people who were born babies but not baptized, and so they are stuck in limbo, but they've grown up between this heaven and hell state, and now they are teenagers or young adults or whatever, and they work for the system. So they escort dead people either to heaven or hell. There are secretaries at each gate, and the secretaries look to find out whether that person should be there, and if they are supposed to, then the escorts then leave them there, otherwise they escort them to hell. I really enjoyed this story. It was very fascinating about the whole system where limbo people are actually workers, so you're not able to get into heaven and frolic with angels because you weren't baptized, so now you're, lower class and you have to like work for the system, which is such a weird concept. I loved the whole thing, and I wish it was longer, and I like that one. And then the very last one that I really liked was called Forever Upward, and it's about an indigenous, like, society. I don't know what they are. They're some kind of like an Indian society. And missionaries come and they take over. They basically take all the husbands and young boys out of the villages, away from the wives and sisters, and they convert them to their religion. They take away their culture. They take away their many gods. They say that the one true God is the God for them, that if they don't go along with what they say, then they will be, you know, either condemned or like ostracized and, you know, taken out of the village and maybe killed. Who knows? It doesn't continue on. But it just makes me really sad because this has happened over and over and over again throughout history where, you know, a dominant society will come in, they'll take over, and they will say what you believe in is bad or false, and what I believe in is better than yours, and so either you believe in what I believe or you're dead. And it just makes me really angry. Me personally, my opinion is leave people alone, and if they choose to learn about our ways, then they will come. You don't have to constantly pester them into following others, you know. I don't know. That's a complicated issue that people get upset about. So that story made me think and made me angry, and so that's why I liked it. But the other ones were just okay. Wow, that was a very long review on that book. I apologize. All right, and the next two books that I read were the Read-Reread challenge. So I did reread Shutter Island by Dennis Lehan, and the person who, you know, changed it up is Christian Demeter. I really liked this again, and this is the third time, well, the third time I read it. This is the third time ingesting this story, because the first time I watched the movie, then I read the book, and then reading the graphic novel made me realize that there was a lot of aspects to the story where you get like peeks at the fact that something's not right, and I wish I would have saw that when I was reading the novel. I just kept going through the novel, not thinking anything of it, but the second time around, you're like, oh my gosh, that totally tells me exactly what's going to happen with the story. Hello! Like, sometimes I don't catch on to the clues when I read mysteries. I'm always like so on edge the entire time. So when I find out who the killer is or what happens at the end, I'm always like, wow, that doesn't make any sense. And other people will be like, hello, they pretty much told you who the killer was at the beginning if you had paid attention. But I get too involved in the actual character that's talking than in anything that goes around the character. So I gave it 5 stars. I absolutely loved it the third time. And then I also read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. This is from Lois Stevenson, but Klimowski and Schibel made it into a graphic novel. I really liked the pencil drawings. They're like either charcoal or some kind of pencil. They're very crude, very ugly drawings that I absolutely loved it. And the story is still a 3-star story. It's, you know, what it is. He's 2 people in the same body because he takes a potion, and he has to live with the consequences. So there's that. It was okay. All right, the next book that I read that was not part of my TBR last week was For Darkness Shows the Stars by Diana Peterfrund. I read this book because I thought it was due on Thursday, and so I read it in one sitting. All Wednesday, I read and finished this book, and it was absolutely amazing. I didn't think I would like it as much as I did, because when I read the novella, Among the Nameless Stars, Kai and Elliot didn't make any sense. And the fact that Elliot's name is Elliot, like, that's a boy's name. It's not like some other boys' names. That's like a true boy's name. But then you find out why she's called Elliot, and you're like, oh, that's cute. But their love, like, romance thing in this book isn't what you expect. They despise each other. Absolutely despise each other as adults. When they were 14 and they were teenagers, they were very much in love. And it's a upper class, lower class kind of society. So Elliot is the Baron's daughter of the North, so she's rich and educated. And then there is Kai, who is a post, or they call it a core, which is a child of the reduced. I don't want to get into the details on how they are reduced people, because that's part of the lore and part of the book's like plot line, and it's interesting to learn that later on while you're reading it. But basically it's you can't love her, she's rich and you're poor, and there's nothing you can offer her, and it's like completely unheard of for a post to marry a ludite anyway, because they are high society. You just don't marry the help. That's unheard of. And yeah, just snarkiness ensues, and there's bitter resentfulness because Kai leaves. He doesn't want to be a slave his whole life, so he leaves. And then Elliot's upset because, you know, she knew that he was going to leave, but she really misses him, and he hates her because she didn't go with him. And that's the whole dynamic, is he hates her because of her choices, and she feels bad because of her choices, but she's definitely not regretful for what her decision was. She decided to stay for a good reason. It was a valiant reason, and but Kai doesn't see it that way. And there is steampunk in here as well. This is like a dystopian, which was very, you see the cover, and the cover makes absolutely no sense. Like, it kind of does because they talk about stars in the book, but this is actually a dystopian based on a future after all of the high technology that we've done. So this takes place on an island. So many people were trying to make humans better through like kind of like cyborgs or whatever. They would enhance the humans so much so that God punished them, and there was like this huge like wipeout of people, and the ludites are the ones that saved the race because they hid, and now they're trying to reproduce the world. And but they it's just fun to read about a future where they're like, oh, Thomas Edison was amazing, but they don't like having technology anymore because they believe technology is a sin. It was just fascinating. The whole book was fascinating. Just read it. And it's a retelling, I believe, of Persuasion. Yeah, I've never read Persuasion, but now I'm really interested in reading it. Definitely check this book out. And the very last book that I read was Challenger Deep by Neil Shusterman. This is his brand new, this is a standalone. Brand new standalone. It came out, I believe, last month or the month before. I am in love with this book. I gave it 5 stars. Both of these books were 5 stars, but this one really touched me. It's about a boy named Caden Bosch, and he has a mental illness. They don't really explain to you what he has in the book. It's between like schizophrenia or bipolar, but it talks about how each patient that has mental illness has a different like strand. So you could be categorized as a schizophrenic, but there are different layers of schizophrenia. And so it's really hard to place somebody in some kind of category or box when the outcome of their illness is different from a person who has the same illness. It was just so sad and beautiful, and I've read a lot of mental illness books in the past month, and so this one was just like my favorite by far out of all of the ones that I've read. So he does go to a mental institution, like Seabreeze Memorial Hospital, I think that's what the name is called. And his parents have to go through the process as he goes through a process of getting better. Trial and error through like medications to see which one works, and trying to get him back on track to a reality that everyone lives in. Because right now he's you know, coasting. Sometimes he's there, sometimes he's not. And it was so brilliantly written, because at the beginning I thought that this was a dream. Like, I had no idea what was going on. And then you see the POV change throughout the book, which is kind of confusing at the beginning, and then you get it. The momentum makes sense because it starts off with, first person. Caden is talking. He's talking about his day-to-day life and school and with friends and everything, but then he slips, and sometimes it'll say you, second person, and you can kind of see, or he'll talk about a person in like a dream state that is actually a person in reality, but he's putting them into his delusions. It's such a well-written book. And then come to find out, this book was not only written by Neal Shusterman, but the illustrations in here are from his son Brendan when he was in his manic depression days. I don't know, I think he might have been bipolar. I mean, he is still bipolar. You don't lose your mental illness, you just get better through medication. But this was his bad days. So these are his son's actual drawings when he was in a mental institute. And so I just thought that was a very interesting touch to the book, because you actually get to see physical evidence of what your mind goes through drawings of emotional things that happen when you're not coherent. And not only that, but this has a strong family value in the book, which was really, really good, especially as a mom. Like, I cried at the end of this book. And I've told you guys before, I'm a sap when it comes to children and stuff. And so the parents are 100% there with Caden, even though he's not lucid. Like, he keeps going in and out of like this fog of like medication and his delusions, and the parents are constantly there every single day. He's in the hospital for 9 weeks, and they visit him every day that he's in the hospital. And a lot of the times you'll see either documentaries or whatever, parents they give up and they just leave their kids there and never speak to them again. Or they do, but out of obligation. They just don't want to deal with that kind of stress. But the parents are so on board, and they love their son so much that they continue to be in pain as long as their son is in pain. And that just really touched me. So I would highly recommend you read this book. It's just a fascinating book. A look into what happens with someone who is going through mental illness. And it's a great story, and I loved the characters. And it's partly true because, Neal had his son, and he also had a best friend that was a schizophrenic, and so he got all of the details for the story through their lives. So he was living through this kind of stuff, so he knows firsthand that this is what goes on. Very, very good. So those were the 5 books that I read last week. I'm sorry this review was so long, but I had so many things I had to say. That's it. I hope you guys have a wonderful week, and I will talk to you soon. Bye!